All right, so not sure what happened there. Um, had to fix or try to fix my audio, and I think I ended up ending the stream accidentally. Let's get started. I'm just doing the wings on this Red Drummond today, and I need black thread. So I like to switch my thread colors uh, from white to black. I usually do white under the body because you want a bright background for some of the thinner silks. The silk that I have on here right now is not too sensitive to that, but sometimes if you're using very single strand of Japanese embroidery silk, it can be a little bit uh, black thread will show through, particularly colors like cream or yellow. Um, Come on. And so I use white on the body usually, and then when I get to the head, I'll switch to black because I'll lay down a layer of black lacquer, and it just colors. It's a darker head. It ends up with a more black head if I use black thread. So I'm just gonna start my thread, and it also helps hide if you have a gap. You know, if you inadvertently have a gap between your tie-in point for your throat and your wing, it just hides that gap a little bit. All right. Get that tie-in point nice and even. Okay, so now I have to put together the wing. I did think about putting the wing together prior to starting the stream, uh, but I think a lot of people want to see. Well, when I'm at a show or something, a lot of people want to see a wing be assembled. The wing on the Red Drummond calls for white tip turkey underwing, which is what we have on there already, and then peacock, red, yellow, and blue dyed swan. In this case, we're going to use dyed turkey, um, bustard, speckled bustard, that is. So I'm going to use Cory bustard for that. And then uh, golden pheasant tail. Like usual, I'm going to use Am Gold or a hybrid pheasant, Lady Amherst golden pheasant hybrid, uh, because that's what I have. So that's the main wing. Uh, the peacock that it's calling for, I generally interpret it to mean peacock secondary wing feather. And as you'll see, the fibers on this are kind of short, especially compared to turkey or even some of the larger swan. Um, so what I will do is I will actually tie or I will marry together the rest of the wing, and then I will put the peacock on the bottom of the wing last, and leave it short, but married into the wing nonetheless. So with that, let us begin. So I'm going to start with the colors because I do want to mix them just a little bit. And I think what I'm going to do to mix them is tie them in with um, speckle bustard, Cory bustard in between each color. And I'm going to go the classic kind of order, or the order that a lot of people use, is yellow, red, blue. And I'm not going to mess with that. That is visually pleasing, and I like that. So And again, I have some of this very nice dyed yellow. It's a little bright. Dyed yellow turkey tail. This is again from John McLean at feathersmc.com. Not sponsored by them, but hey, John, if you're listening. Yeah, so this is really nice quality. It looks good. This is a nice golden yellow color. And let's see. We'll just build the wing out of this, I think. We'll probably do 3 barbs of each color. Maybe 4 of blue. So we have the peacock on the bottom. So I generally like to have my wing outlined, a bar of darker something, and then around the color. I think that just kind of outlines the wing nicely, makes it look sharp. Just trying to think of how much of this speckled bustard I want in the wing. And whether it'd be too much to have 2 bars between every, or 2 fibers between every bit of color, or if that's okay. Since, all right, so we'll just build it. We'll see. We can always take it apart, put it back, and fix it if we think it's too much. It's the nice thing about married wings. A lot of people think married wings are somehow fragile or kind of fiddly to do, and they can be. But if you pick the right materials and, treat them right, they can be just fine. One thing I did before starting the stream was to wash my hands, because the oils on your hands will 100% mat the barbs on the feathers and prevent them from marrying together well. So wash your hands, get the oils off them. You don't have to scrub vigorously, but you do just want to make sure your hands aren't oily. And if you have materials that won't marry or cooperate, or if they're a little bit twisted, you just skip them, cut them out, skip them. Again, married wings work best when you're using the best quality materials. So, if there's a segment on a feather that is just not cooperating, don't use it. Yeah. This bustard is all sorts of twisted. Not liking that. Yeah, and if you have good quality materials, your wing should just Velcro itself together. So, um, particularly materials like turkey and bustard, they're really compatible, and so they'll just zip right up. Okay, now the blue. Yeah, and all I'm doing is laying the strips next to each other, and then gently pushing them together. One thing you can do is if they're not quite, if some of the barbs just don't seem to be marrying well, you can just go like this. That will encourage the barbs to stick out perpendicular and latch onto one another. So this is the dyed turkey or dyed swan and speckled bustard section of the wing. And what we're going to do is I'm going to add the peacock on to the bottom now. I'm going to go fair slice of that, so 3 fibers. Just because, again, it's going to be laid in a little short, so we want it to be a little bit bolder. And based on the length of this fiber here, I'm going to tie it in about a little less than a half an inch short. I basically want the butt ends to be long enough to be tied in with the rest of the wing. Um, because if the butt ends are short, then it won't be tied in properly. I can push that out just a little bit longer. So there you can see just how it's just a little bit shorter. Um, that'll look nice in the wing, just like that. So, all right. So golden pheasant, again, am gold. This is really nice stuff. Again, this is from John McLean. Yeah, he had a very nice selection of it a couple years ago. Gonna go 4 fibers of this. Mm. So, fortunately, those fibers are not as long as I would like them to be. I don't want to shorten my wing anymore. Hmm. don't think I can get that to tie in. It's just a little too short. All right, so I'm gonna have to get some of my actual golden pheasant because I think I have some. I wonder if I bred golden pheasant. Um, yeah, so this is just one of the things about tying. So this is a 5/0 hook, and one of the reasons why I don't like tying on 5/0 hooks is it demands larger materials, and those aren't always easy to come by. Question is this stuff actually longer? That's a no. This might be though. The one thing you'll notice, so that those that is a little bit longer. That's nice. The one thing you'll notice about tying with like actual golden pheasant is that it can be the fibers can be a little bit more stiff, which means they won't tie in as nicely. And the other thing about real golden pheasant is that it can be it can it has a tendency to not marry to other materials quite as nicely or as easily as uh, others. On the other hand, Lady Amherst pheasant is well known for marrying quite well, um, and that's one of the reasons why the Am Gold hybrid between Lady Amherst pheasants and golden pheasants works so well. So I'm gonna start on the far wing, or the wing that's gonna be towards the camera. And again, I'm going to just mirror image this wing. So finished wing, or at least the wing as it is now. And just do the same repeating pattern. You want the wings to be exactly the same. Yeah. So I have yellow. Oop. I had yellow. I have yellow. I have Cory bustard. And again, nice materials. They'll literally just Velcro themselves together. And red dyed turkey. I'm actually using crimson dyed turkey. It's just a little bit of a richer red. And that's because I used crimson floss for the body. So just there. And another. Another slip of speckled bustard. Now blue dyed turkey. And I'm using this beautiful kind of bright blue color dyed turkey. 3 bars. Oop, wrong side. That would not have married very well. No, did I mess that up again? Yep. See, get me talking. The nice thing is if you cut too many slips, you can just marry it back into the feather. All right, so I had the right one to begin with. I think there's already 2 cut there, so. I'm going to have to watch the thickness on this far wing because I think the fibers are just a tad bit shorter, which means they're a little bit stouter. They're a little bit thicker. And so I just need to make sure that the wings are of comparable thickness, height, when I place them back and start to tie them in, because I want them to be, in order for them to tie in evenly, they have to be of even thickness. Okay, so I'm going to just put away these turkey because I no longer need them out. I just need a little bit of space. And if you're wondering where I get my Cory bustard, I get this from through the species survival program. I think that's what it's still called. And basically, what it is by giving away these feathers for free, they're basically taking away any monetary incentive for poachers to kill wild birds. And all of these feathers are acquired from zoo animals. And seems to be working. I know one of the contributing zoos is the National Zoo here in Washington, D.C. I think like San Diego, maybe, or one of the big zoos out west, and I think maybe the Denver Zoo. But don't quote me on that because I am not certain off the top of my head. All right, so now that we've got that central chunk of color all assembled, again, I'm going to take my peacock wing, and because these are shorter fibers than the turkey, I'm going to marry it in short. I'm going to try and match the length on the right and the left. Too many. All right. I think that's just 3. Right, so it's about a 1/4 inch short on the left. Yeah. So, yeah. So you can see that little bit of shortened peacock wing at the bottom there. Then golden pheasant for the top. And I am counting these fibers, but as I mentioned before, you really want to ensure that the wings are the same width when you hold them back to back. So if necessary, you can adjust by, removing fibers from various segments if necessary. Actually, kind of looking at these, they look pretty close. Just gonna trim the butt ends a little bit so they don't get in my way while tying. And right. Just want to make sure the wings are a similar angle and similar um, just trying to get them back to back here, aligned. All right, so that actually looks pretty good. I think thickness of the speckled bustard, the Cory bustard, kind of made up for some of the loss in the uh, color, the dyed turkey segments. So yeah, so this is a pretty nice wing. These are the two back to back. I even managed to get the peacock relatively aligned. So to tie them in, I'm just going to tent it so it looks. You can see it's a little bit tented underneath. Just going to drop it right over that underwing and make sure the length is where I want it. One trick, if you have a fairly thick wing or elements in the wing that don't like to compress well, you can take a little bit of saliva, and I find saliva works best. And you just kind of dampen the wing ever so slightly at the tie-in point, particularly that golden pheasant. And then you pinch it right at the tie-in point, one soft loop. And then what I'm doing is I'm lifting the butts of the wings up while pinching, simultaneously maintaining the pinch with this hand. What that does is it compresses the fibers of the wing straight down. And that looks like a pretty good set. I'm just going to push the wing from the front. I'm not going to pull the wing. I'm going to push the wing from the front towards the back just so that the tie-in point ends up right over where the other tie-in points are. And just kind of tease the wing a little bit, just get to lay there. Awesome. And you know, if you don't get it the first time, just take it off, take the wing off, and do it again. The thing about these wings is they're not so fragile you can't set a wing, you know, 3 or 4 times even. You can take it off, put it on again. Eventually, you will compress it to the point where it'll just automatically fold the same way every time. In that case, the best thing you can do is just remake the wing. If you can't remake the wing because either you have limitations on materials, or you know, perhaps it's the only wing you have, you can steam it, and that will restore some of the flexibility to it. But really, once it gets compressed a couple of times, it's too compressed. You will need to remake the wing. So that went on surprisingly well. I don't usually get my wings on in the first try. The trick with the saliva, by the way, is something I learned from uh, uh, Charlie Shute. Um, however, no one can match his technique because his saliva is imbued with Irish whiskey and acts like glue to hold the feathers in place. I joke, but not really. um, if you've ever seen a Charlie shoot wing, it's like this thick sitting on top of the hook, and it's they're amazing flies. But I learned that trick from him. So we're just going to trim up the butts. We're going to trim them out at an angle. All right, and now I'm going to wax my thread and secure these butts so the wing doesn't go anywhere. It's just being held in right now with some just bare thread. You need the bare thread for the soft loop, but eventually, you you want to secure it with a little bit of wax tying thread. Just so the wing doesn't shift. Yeah, so this is the last stream of 2019. It is, at the time of recording, if you're watching this afterwards, New Year's Eve day. Comment below if you have any fly tying resolutions. Uh, yeah. Just gently work in the wing, just so it sits just the way I want it. It's on pretty straight. Yeah. Nice wing. Just want it to sit just a little lower over the body. So I'm going to all right. So what's next? So next would be the sides, and the sides of this fly are made up of uh, barred wood duck, or summer duck, as they would say, and teal. So I'm going to marry some teal to some summer duck, and then there is jungle cock, chatterer, which I will substitute with Eurasian kingfisher, and a topping overall, and macaw, blue macaw feelers or horns. So my favorite order operations involves reversing my thread between each between the duck components. Because duck, so this is actually some Gadwell. Looks like teal. The barring's a little less defined than on teal, but it works. It looks good, and it currently is what I have a good pair of. Duck is such a soft material to tie in. I find it goes on to the fly easier when the thread is wrapping into it. So if I'm tying, the the duck sides on the side towards me, I want the thread to be going into it, so up and over this way. But then when I'm tying it onto the other side, or the side facing you, the camera, I want to be wrapping away from me, or in the other direction so that I'm wrapping up and over. That's just the way I find it goes on easier. What happens is if you're wrapping downwards, so if I'm trying to tie it on to the far side for me and I'm wrapping it downwards, it tends to slip down. Um, and that can be a little frustrating. So I, I I will reverse my thread when I come to tie on the opposite side. So good barred wood duck. I got a nice pair here, and uh, definitely don't count these barbs, or I don't. I just kind of look and guess for an appropriate size chunk. So it's a pretty, as a general rule, I don't have a hard and fast rule in terms of like how thick to make these. I just like to be maybe the thickness of one or two of the um, colored segments in the wing. So it's a little thicker than you know. Um, I think, and again, that's just because I find it visually pleasing. It's not any particular historical reason. Um, and then I'm just going to marry the duck, the gadwall to the summer duck. And the tips won't marry very well. I mean, that's just kind of the way duck is. It's actually this portion that's closer to the stem or the rachis that is going to marry well. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to tie the married segment of teal, or in this case gadwall and wood duck, on one side, and then I'm also going to add the mallard roof on this side. Then I'm going to reverse my thread, tie the duck components on the other side, reverse my thread again, and tie everything else on. Uh, so okay, now for the mallard roof. Um, and similar to the teal and gadwall that I just tied on, the mallard roof, I'm just going to take a hefty chunk. And one of the really important things about bronze mallard is the bronze tips. So as you can see, like the tips out here get bronze or kind of bronzy in color. Those won't those are pretty stiff. They won't flex very much. It's really this gray area down here that is the flexible bit. So when you lay it against the wing, you see it has that curvature here. The gray part is what's going to actually curve around the wing and give it its shape. So I'm just going to work the bronze mallard so that it will follow curvature of the wing. And then I want to tie the mallard on top. So almost overlapping the top of the wing, not quite, not quite rolled over. Whoop, too far. Not like that. And I'm going to tie it straight up, or looks like it's straight up. But then it'll just, because of that more flexible gray bit, it can just lay right along top. Now, I'm going to reverse my thread, tie on the other side so that you can see what I'm talking about. Just going to secure a few more wraps, wax my thread just to bind down these tag ends as usual. Normally, if I'm tying on wing components bilaterally, so both sides at the same time, I wouldn't bother to trim until both sides were on, um, or until I was ready to start binding down the next thing. However, because I have to reverse my thread, I need clear access to the eye. I am going to trim this off. Um, I know there are a lot of people out there who advocate for making as few turns of thread at the hook eye. Um, I'm not one of those who's particularly fond of super tiny heads on salmon flies. Sure, I think they look neat, but I don't think they're particularly historically accurate. A lot of the flies you'll see, you know, actually tied by the masters have massive heads. Um, some anecdotal evidence that if the gut of the eye broke, if the head was large enough, you could just take the fishing line, tie it around the head or behind the head, and continue to fish the fly. Uh, I don't know if that's strictly true, but I don't see why not. Um, but also, a lot of the recipes call for or specifically have specific instructions for the head, either like, you know, the head should be black or dubbed red. And the fact that the authors of these recipes took the time to specify, instructions for the head indicates that the head was really an integral part of the aesthetic of the fly. And so I think just in general, yeah, I don't need to have ultra tiny head on my salmon flies. Okay, so here I have the teal and the wood duck for the other side. Um, for me, I am doing this blind, so I just kind of line it up where I want it. Then I just push it around until it lays where I want. And again, so I'm wrapping towards me. Yeah. Um, and for me, that's a pretty surefire way to get your duck to lay on the wing properly every time. Again, duck is one of those things that is more forgiving than people think it is. You can take, slips of duck off a wing and retie them in, a couple times if you need to. Don't be afraid to do that. But duck is a little bit more fragile than, say, turkey. So, yeah, um, it will reach its limit in terms of the number of attempts you get a little bit sooner. So, and that's how I do that. One more wrap to secure. Wax my thread. Trim the butt ends. Wrap the wax thread to the head to bind down. Butts so they won't go anywhere. And when I get to the head, I'm going to reverse. So to reverse my thread, usually when you tie in a gut eye, there's usually a little bit of the hook that's left, the actual hook shank itself left exposed. And what I do is I slip the thread between the gut and the little nub of hook, and that just provides a good anchor for me to then reverse the direction of the thread. Just going to scooch everything around on the hook shank until it sits pretty. And there we go. Yeah, so that's a really kind of good way to ensure that your duck goes on, slips of duck go on, and are pushed in the right direction to sit on the hook. Okay, so again, just going to do a little bit of clean up so that I don't have duck feathers going everywhere. And then I'm going to add the sides, which are a jungle cockeye and a kingfisher. Well, a chatterer. Feather, but I'm not going to use chatterer because chatterers is both rare and expensive. I'm going to substitute Eurasian kingfisher, which is readily available and not so rare, not so. I don't know. Is chatterer? Chatterer's, I think, endangered. At the very least, it's hard to find it in the fly tying world. So, jungle cock cape. Again, this one's fairly well picked over already. Just because I've had this one for a while. Lovely quality of eyes on this, though. That one maybe. Just looking for a pair that has similarly sized eyes and that have opposite curvatures, slight curvatures. I want to tie it in just not quite as long as the duck. So everything you tie on should be just a little bit shorter than the previous thing you tied on. The exception for me is the bronze mallard roof, because that goes on after the wood duck and teal sides. That's going to be a little bit longer than those, but otherwise, pretty much. As you tie something new on, it's going to get shorter and shorter and shorter. So I like that one there. And as you can see, I'm not trimming these. I'm just tying them on fluff and all. And the reason for that is the the extra barbs, the extra bits of fluff, actually help keep the jungle cockeye up against the side of the fly. Jungle cock, the stem is round in kind of the wrong way, and so it tends to twist. By leaving all those extra barbs on, it prevents it from twisting. And I'll do the same with the kingfisher as well. So the feathers from the kingfisher that I want for this. So if this is the kingfisher skin, it's these feathers just before the tail. And along the back, I should say, as well. And I only need one per side, so I'll And again, because these are going on, these kingfisher's feathers are going on after. No, that's not a very good one. Yeah, one good one. That's a good one. I just want two matching ones. These match? Yeah. Okay. Because they go on after the jungle cock, again, they're going to be a little bit shorter length, and they're just going to veil the jungle cock. Like I said, I'm not trimming the fluff because the extra fluff helps keep them from rotating around the, or from, oop, a little bit of correction there. Okay. Now, because there's so much fluff here on the fly, now with these on, I am going to wax my thread pretty well. Waxing your thread helps control extra fuzzies. I'm just going to snip. Careful not to pull. Because like I said, you want those extra barbs there just to keep everything in place. You also don't want to pull, the feathers out. Now disturbed, just slightly disturbed by bronze mallard roof. Yeah. Okay. So that is looking pretty good. Guess I just barely get my bronze mallard roof out of alignment there. So just gonna work it back into place. Finish binding down these butt ends. Like I said, the actual bronze part of the bronze mallard can be a little bit unruly because it doesn't. It's stiffer than the rest of the feather, and it won't marry even to itself very well. So every now and then you just get some broke fibers. Where is that one coming from? Oh. Okay. Okay, so that's looking mighty fine. Now for the topping and horns, and then we're done. And for the topping, we have tin of crests. Um, yeah. Just kind of massage it so it's not quite so curvy. Oh. Okay, so to side this in, I'm just going to introduce a little bit of kink into the rachis. I'm going to flatten the rachis and then give it a little bit of a kink to encourage it to ride up over the wing properly. It's pretty good. I think though I actually kind of want a longer crest. Yeah. All right. So I got a couple of crests in this tin. These crests have all been sorted by the head that or the golden pheasant head that they came from. So they are all they're all color matched essentially. Yeah. So this one is going to be the proper length. I just need to. Just find the correct length so that it will meet up with its tail, or nearly so. I don't mind if it doesn't quite meet up with the tail. I know a lot of people strive for that, but for me, that's not so important. Yeah, that's pretty good. All right. So, blue macaw horns or feelers. Uh, How long do I want these? Blue macaw is one of those feathers where you don't have to reverse your thread, but I kind of like to when I have the chance. I'm not going to on this fly because I don't think I have to, but you know, it does tie in just a little bit easier if you do reverse your thread. Um, this particular segment of blue macaw doesn't quite have the curvature, so they're not going to meet at the top, which is fine. Uh, Again, I'm not quite so picky. Um, Mostly just want them to match up in length and angle. And then again, as always, when tying something in and securing it, I'm going to wax my thread. I'll go wax my thread. Right. So I'm just going to all of these bits, secure them with the wax thread. Going to call that good. So this is the finished Red Drummond. Just gonna whip. So you know what I'm going to do? I am going to keep wrapping. Just give it a little bit of bulk. I've got a little bit of a bump where I think some materials ended. All right, there we go. Smooth that out just a little bit. With it. All right. That'll get a couple coats. I'll use the Bill Bailey's Kelson head cement. Just kind of. One thing that I do notice is that the macaw horns do like to marry onto or grab the duck, and so it can pull the duck away from where you want it to be. Yeah, macaw is one of those materials that is like supernaturally good at marrying to things. So even single macaw horns can pull other materials out of alignment, which is annoying. But you work with materials. So there you go. That's a pretty good looking salmon fly, if you ask me. Um, Slightly less well known than like, the Jock Scott or Green Highlander, but it's kind of very much in that same visual, uh, tradition or style, um, with like the heavy built wing and the uh, excessively large number of sides. Um, so there we go. That is the Red Drummond. I do want this wing to sit just a little bit higher. Such a nice hook. Good shape. So there we go. If you don't mind hanging around for just a few minutes, I will put some head cement on. And it's a little bit fiddly because this is, black head cement. We don't want it to soak into things like the hackle or the wing. Right, so one of the things I'd like to do with my tying, I guess one of my resolutions this year is to figure out how to uh, efficiently upload, you know, good quality tying videos, um, just to show people, how I do certain skills. Um, every tire has his or her own tricks. I certainly am no different. But I like seeing other people's tips and tricks, and people have asked for various demonstrations. So if there's a skill or part of the fly you would like to see me tie on video, filmed from my perspective, leave it in the comments. I'll see what people are interested in. Uh, Try and figure out something. I find that most cameras are too large for me to tie around, so I may experiment with like a GoPro. But just let me know if there's anything you would like to see me demonstrate. Um, so here's the finished fly with head cement, uh, a cemented head, so to say. And thanks for watching. I think I'm going to end the stream there. Went a little bit over. This is a complicated wing to tie in, um, at least compared to some flies. And this is the last stream of the year of 2019. Wow. I hope it's been a good year for you all, and Happy New Year. I will, just as a reminder, I'll be streaming again tomorrow to ring in the new year. Hopefully, I won't be too hungover. I don't plan on it. And Yeah, thanks for uh, watching and hanging out with me. And I'll see you in 2020, bringing back the Roaring Twenties, I guess. So take care. I'll see you tomorrow in the new year.